It's time for another recap of the wins in courts against the Trump administration. I take a lot of pleasure in doing these videos for you every single week. I used to do it when I first started. Each win, it got overwhelming. So recapping them actually is great because when you see the sum of the week, to the extent that we are using the judiciary and the courts to push back against the lawlessness of the Trump administration and regime, it's delicious, and it kind of gives it more a euphoric sort of like high of seeing all these wins, experiencing them and learning about them and hearing them each day is great. But then when you recap them, it's kind of like, yeah, all right, we're doing it. So let's get started. The most latest one, let's start with Perkins Co. It's one of 5 or 6 law firms that Donald Trump had targeted in petty retaliatory executive orders, seeking to retribute or punish them for either being related to or have an association affiliation with Robert Mueller, who prosecuted him, or having represented nonprofits, organizations that went after Donald Trump. Petty bullshit. So anyway, pardon my French. They had already gotten a preliminary injunction, and all of the firms that fought back got one stopping them, saying it violates so many ultra vires, First Amendment. And so Perkins Co said, you know what, we need a permanent bar, like a declaratory ruling. Judge Beryl Howell was the one. On May 2nd, she issued one. Essentially, let me just read some of her conclusion. She says the U.S. Constitution affords critical protections against executive actions ordered in the executive order. It says government officials, including the president, may not subject individuals to retaliatory actions after the fact for having protected speech. They neither use the power of the state to punish or suppress disfavored speech or for purely personal and arbitrary power. And she cites the United States Supreme Court decisions and all of her conclusions. And it was just like, that's why Skadden Arps and Paul Weiss were foolish to capitulate. And there's stories out there, go ahead and look for them, how that's impacted them. Like lawyers, students don't want to clerk for them anymore. Like people don't want them to represent them. So it was a major mistake to capitulate and bend the knee to Donald Trump, Skadden Arps. So bravo for Perkins Co. That was an excellent, excellent win. Next. The second of the latest wins was Judge Rodriguez Jr. in the Northern District of Texas. For the first judge, I think, to say Donald Trump's use of Alien Enemies Act of the 18th century wartime law to justify denying due process rights to brown and Latino and Hispanic and just brown people generally, and send them off to a torture camp in El Salvador and other foreign nations is an improper use of that act. In his order, he said specifically, like, there's 2 uses of the act. One, if we're at a war, or when, or a second time when alien invasion, when another nation sends people to the United States for the purposes of infiltrating the United States to kind of take over our government as part of that national effort. He said that you can't just say loosely some like gang members that aren't necessarily related to the nation. It weren't ordered by, and specifically, let me give you the language. It says, and he says, for that reason, he says the Trump administration cannot use that law to violate due process. And he also created a class. The Supreme Court denied the class that Judge Boasberg was trying to create, class for everyone in the United States, and said it has to be unique to the division. So ACLU has been going to wherever immigrants or migrants of Venezuelan descent have been detained and asking judges to issue class. There's one in New York, there's one pending in Colorado, and so this request was granted. So in addition to telling the Trump administration you cannot use the act that way, he also granted the class and says everyone in his district, no one in his district can be used to summarily be shipped off to CCOT or any other foreign prison, because I discovered that he also formed relationships with Panama, Honduras, and I read that Grenada. He was just asking all small nation islands off the coast of the United States if they can just send people there. And you know why they want to send people there is because the United States have laws related to 8th Amendment torture, and there's a lot of restrictions here, and so they want to send them off-site where they can just put them away as far away as possible from council and just remove them from the country. So that was terrible, lawless, so that's a win. Next. You probably also saw that Mosen Madwi, who is a Palestinian immigrant, green card holder, was lied to. You might have seen that he was tackled on his way to get his naturalization documents. It was a setup for the most part, and then he was jailed. And the Trump administration attempted to remove him from Vermont to Louisiana. As I've said before, if you follow my accounts, what they do is they detain these Venezuelans, just detain people who they want to deport. Wherever they are, most likely they are in places like New York or Massachusetts, Vermont, perhaps DC, and they take them down to Louisiana or Texas on purpose in hopes of getting like a conservative judge. But it hasn't been working, because even when they initially removed some, I'm going to talk about a couple later on, to Virginia, they didn't get a good review, so they tried to remove them to Texas, and the Texas judge there as well said, no, you can't do this. And as I've said before, you're going to be seeing judges that Donald Trump appointed himself his first term, that George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, and then also Ronald Reagan appointed, who are on the bench, who are telling Donald Trump, you can't do this. You are going against the law. And to see the MAGAs accuse the judges and try to say they want to impeach the judges and say the judges are being leftist and they're activists. No, Donald Trump is being lawless, because I'm watching these dockets. They prove they don't have law to justify what they're doing. The law is not on their side, and they don't have facts, data, and evidence. They're just making up stuff. And that's not how it works. We have a rule of law. And a long time ago, the Republicans used to stand for the rule of law. They used to be the party that was all about law and order, and they are no longer. They prefer the law because they're MAGA, they're cultists. They just, like, if Donald Trump wants it, they get it. They're in support of a dictator. They want America to be more like Russia. But again, I digress. Get my I digress merch. Support my channel. So yeah, so you can't do that. And then separately, Makmu Khalil also, they attempted to say that the habeas corpus, the judge that was reviewing Makmu Khalil's case doesn't have the jurisdiction. They're trying their best to deny due process, and then that judge was like, oh hell no, I have jurisdiction. You can't remove him to immigration. Judge, essentially they want to move him to the immigration courts, because if they remove him to the immigration courts, that's under the executive, and Donald Trump has control over those because the immigration courts are under his administration and the judiciary is independent. And so the judge that's reviewing Makmu Khalil's case was like, nah, dude, we good. We're going to keep it right here. He's still detained. He didn't release him, but that's still good. When the Trump administration has attempted to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I'm going to say in another case, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau brings money back to the pockets of Americans. And also they're dismantled the IRS, which brings back money to the Internal Revenue Service, to the government. They're removing immigrants who pay like billions into the Social Security and state and federal reserve every year. They can't take it out, but they pay into it. So they're removing them. And so you're removing a revenue generating source there. They are alienating international students that pay top dollar, that pay a lot more than state students, that pay more than private. They're removing that money. And then they're making America seem such like a horrible place to be, that he's limiting tourism. And in some of the states, including a lot of red states, they rely on tourism. People come from other places, and that's one of our major draw to the United States is the schools and the sites. Donald Trump by himself is decreasing the draw here, which is the students and the tourism, and is messing up, including his red states. Racism, ignorance, being a petty bitch doesn't pay. Next. So there was a student who got a DUI. Grad student, pretty cool. Donald Trump tried to revoke his student visa because of that DUI from a while ago. I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategy of trying to remove students, not just for protests, but just essentially it's a campaign to just remove people of color. It's the end of the day. It's a white supremacist, racist regime, and Stephen Miller's at the helm of it. Shame on Marco Rubio, because you technically, as a person of color, even though you're white, you come from a non-Anglo-Saxon country, and they're just trying to remove brown people and de-brownify the United States. That ship has sailed, but they're trying. It's petty and it's silly and it's just small, but they're still trying. So they try to remove this guy because of old DUI, and then they try to remove him to actual Louisiana, part of the campaign. And the judge there was like, no, there's no. And the United States is a nation of immigrants. And all of the folks who's doing this, every single one, Trump, whose mother is an immigrant, whose father is a child of immigrants, who all his kids are children of immigrants, who his lots of Stephen Miller is a freaking descendant of persecuted Jews. Marco Rubio is a child or a grandchild of persecuted Cubans. They're all of them come from nations, come to the United States escaping. All their descendants, all their ancestors came from the United States, escaping some sort of persecution and wherever their frick they came from. And that's the same thing as the people, the newer immigrants, all escaping something, whether it's lack of opportunity, whether it's political violence, whether it's gang violence, whether it's instability, economic instability. Anyone who comes here as a refugee, as an asylum, is escaping something, just as the ancestors of Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, what's that other guy? I always forget that stupid Nolan, the damn dumb ICE director guy. Anyway, they're all of them. All of their ancestors came here escaping something, just as the ones they're doing. And now they're just trying to remove these guys just out of pure racism and that's what he did last time. Someone tagged me in a video to say, oh, they're removing. Anyway, I don't get into that. Anyway, that's that. Open text. So after Donald Trump's revoked the Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, several other radio stations that get funding, which is unlawful because those radio stations and the funding for those entities were created by Congress, and you can't remove something by executive order. Only Congress can remove it. I mean, how many times he's going to try to do stuff that he does things. Every time he does executive order, your posture needs to be, oh my God, when is this one going to be overruled? Because every single one, and he's appealing to the Supreme Court, which is bizarre, is because I don't know why he thinks the Supreme Court is going to affirm them. So at some point, and I've said this before, I predicted this, every single one of the executive orders that he's appealed to the Supreme Court on substance are going to lose, every single one. Not one will he win. I could think he could possibly win the ones with the Humphreys challenge, essentially where they are independent agencies that were created by Congress, where the Congress said that they could only be removed for a cause. That is a U.S. Supreme Court case that affirms that, called Humphreys. And I believe that the Justice Alito and Justice Thomas are eager in expanding the executive power or eager to overrule Humphreys. I'm not quite sure if Chief Justice Roberts is down with it, or Amy Coney Barrett, I don't know if she cares. So if the two of them together go with the liberal justices, that's most likely not going to be overruled. And if it's not, then that's going to deter. And I think by now they know that what they should do with Donald Trump, because he's doing all that he's doing and attacking the judiciary, that they shouldn't give him any wins. Like even if Thomas and Alito were thinking about it, the extent to which he's attacking their own authority, the extent to which he's ignoring what they ordered the facilitation of return on a 9-0 basis of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and he have not done that. So, and they've also said you need to give people due process. They've also said do not remove anyone else from the United States until we review the Alien Enemies Act. The Supreme Court has said that. Donald Trump, after the Supreme Court said that, his Trump administration gathered a bunch of immigrants, put them on a bus to go. The only reason they stopped is because the ACLU was really active in getting, I think it was a district court judge to stop it, in which case that alerted the courts. And I think at some point the word trickled to the Trump administration that, do you realize that Supreme Court told you don't remove any more people? And they were like, oh shit, and they returned it. I really do think that's what happened. Because as I said before, Judge Boasberg and Judge Kavanaugh and a lot of the justices are aware of what he's doing, and the pipeline and the communication pipeline between the Supreme Court, their clerks, current clerks, PAC's clerks, and the White House and Congress. There's a pipeline. So the word has gotten to Congress and the word has gotten to White House to not do this anymore and to stop. And so I say all that to say that they don't owe Donald Trump anything. To the extent that Alito and Thomas felt like they're in line with Donald Trump, they want to help him promote his conservative agenda. They should know right now that the way that they thought he might have been doing it is not how he's doing it this time. He's doing it in a lawless fashion. So, yeah. Again, I digress. That's why I put my I digress mug. I'm gonna get I digress t-shirts. I also have Operation 2/3. That's my campaign. I'm trying to. It's just a one-woman campaign. I mean, at some point, it has no legs. It's just me. But at some point, I'm hoping it's gaining some momentum as I work through it. If you're interested in it, if you sign up for my private communities, that's where I talk more about that. And after this video, I'm gonna go further in and talk more about that. But tomorrow, look for my wrap up, my summation of the week. So I'm putting like long summations on the YouTube on Sundays and Saturdays. Anyway, back to the video. And another example, there is of them removing people from DC. So they took this couple a long time ago. There's a married couple. The woman was married to a gang member years ago, 10 years ago. They said she's a senior member of the gang, and they arrested her and her husband with their 4 children and stripped them of their temporary protective status because they're Venezuelan descent, and said they're gang members, and she's a senior gang member. When they first took that court to Virginia, that case, and they took them to Virginia hoping that the judge said, if you lost your mind, like you come to me with an affidavit, it says there's no reason why they're being held, she said, addressing the government lawyer in the case. She says, if this was a criminal case, I'd throw you out of my chambers. That's when they arrested them. And then the Trump administration versus releasing them, because that judge says she releases detained couple with temporary protective status. She said release them. So instead of releasing them, what they did was they took them to Texas, hoping to get a better decision. And then the judge in Texas was like, well, have you lost your mind? Senior Judge David Briones in El Paso based said no. And then in the decision, he also quoted her and said, you've lost your mind, essentially. Like, you can't do this. That's my daughter. You hear taking a shower in our house, the pipes suck. Anyway, the judge says, even presuming Donald Trump's proclamation is unlawful, the government fails to provide petitioners, fails to prove petitioners could properly be designated alien enemies under the TDA proclamation. And she was just like, what the freak y'all doing? Y'all just like, it just, anyway. I forgot to mention, Open Tech said, even though the Trump administration said they're releasing and giving them back their funding, they and the court blocked them they appealed it, and the court said, well, we're going to let you keep their employees. You can't not fire the employees. And while this case goes on appeal, but they released it, and they're going to lose on that, because it's kind of like you can't remove these entities that were created by Congress. In order for them to dismantle, Congress has to dismantle them. You can't dismantle them by disfunding them when they've already been allocated that funding already. You know what I mean? So Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued a rebuke saying that the Trump administration is essentially attacking them, trying to bully judges, and she's the first to actually say it. The rest of them tiptoed around it. Sonia Sotomayor kind of mentioned it. Chief Justice Roberts issued an opinion, but they all are aware. So I hope this is helpful. This is a roundup of the case. Lots of wins. Again, like I said, tomorrow I'm going to give you a wrap up of what I think, of the first 100 days and my thoughts on how this is going to go. And then I'm going to do an additional deep dive for my member community about Operation 2/3, because Operation 2/3 I keep off site. But follow this account. I hope you're happy with all the wins. JJ Legal, share this with anyone who needs good news. I am happy to do this. This is one of my highlights of my week is doing this wrap-ups for you. And gonna go to my gym class now. Gonna edit this video and try to publish it in the afternoon. Thanks so much for supporting me. Get my outlasting47.com if you like some guides, trackers, legal templates, case trackers, anything you need. I'll also have for $1 some guides in Spanish as well. I did a video. You can check it out here of what's in the guide if you're watching this on YouTube.